Woo! I like some woos. All right, so if I haven't met everybody, I'm Elizabeth Sketchfield. I'm the Director of Partner Relations here, and we bring in speakers weekly as part of your offerings here to help continue to build bridges for you in the industry and make sure you kind of get the insights you need to make sure that you're prepared when you walk out the doors, but also to help you build connections with really cool companies that are doing really cool things, like Tableau. So, who's heard of Tableau? Nice, okay, awesome. So, really looking forward to Zahir's talk today. One of the things that we have been trying to do and is reinforce the professional competencies that are valued within the industry. And you guys probably, hopefully, have been introduced to those at some point in the curriculum that we've kind of developed a set of core competencies. But essentially, Zahir is going to talk to us today about leadership and kind of how you can kind of continue to work towards building that muscle. Because that is a really important part of being a strong candidate, not just your tech skills, but your soft skills as well. So with that, I will hand it off, and thank you for being here.
Can you guys hear me okay? Yes. Louder? Better? Okay. I have a quiet voice. So if I get too quiet, you have to remind me to speak up. So I'm here to talk about leadership. So before we start, I wanted to introduce Tableau, but it sounds like quite a few people know about Tableau. So for those of you who didn't raise your hand, Tableau is it's a software company. Our mission is to help people see and understand their data. It was founded in Seattle. The two co-founders are Stanford grads, and it's a local company. Our mission, as I mentioned, is to help people see and understand data. Why is that so important? I think one of the things to look at is just look around you at the amount of data that we are generating. And so data from, who has a Fitbit or a way of like tracking your steps, right? Finance data, your banking data, healthcare data. All of that is, the amount of data is continuing to increase. And so at Tableau, we believe that anyone should be able to see and understand their data. What's happened in the past in a lot of organizations is that there will be, the IT team that has all the data, and you need to wait for them to build out reports before you can start getting insight out of that data. And so Tableau actually pioneered what we call the visual analytics market, so that anyone can, even without strong technical skills, be able to connect to this data, combine it with other data, and then be able to get insight out of that data. Let's see, what else did I want to talk about here? So why am I here? What's my background? What makes me qualified to talk about leadership? So I'm a dev manager at Tableau. I have a computer science background. I started actually my career at Microsoft on the Excel team. That's when I drank the data Kool-Aid, as I like to say, even back then when I started, our mission even on the Excel team back then was to make it easier for people to be able to understand their data. And so, throughout my career, one of the things that I've seen is, so I was at Microsoft, and then when I was at Microsoft opened up a development center in Vancouver, Canada. I'm Canadian, and so at the time I moved up to the Vancouver office to help build out the Vancouver office, and I was part of the leadership team there. So I had some experience, and that's probably when I got the most experience in understanding what it means to, understanding the importance of leadership outside of just, your day-to-day day jobs. Like how do you start up a new center? How do you make sure that, we're engaging with the community? How do you make sure that you are, getting the right talent in the door? And all of that is where I learned a lot about, I learned about different leadership principles and skills. And then after I left Microsoft, I went to a healthcare analytics startup, Paradigm, and leadership skills are even more important in a startup where it's not necessarily always clear what your job is. You could be wearing any hat, any day, and so being comfortable with stepping up, being comfortable with that ambiguity. That's also where I got a lot of experience in understanding, how to do that, and then also understanding the benefit of partnerships. How can you partner with other people within your organization so that you're working together on a mission? And then, I've taken a bunch of courses on leadership. I did the Women's Executive Leadership Program at Stanford. I've done leadership courses here within Seattle, and all of this has helped me be a better manager at my job. And so when Elizabeth was saying earlier, like one of the core competencies of leadership, and I'll talk about more examples in the talk today, but I can't stress enough, like when I'm hiring people for my team, or when I'm joining a company and somebody's interviewing me, the importance of understanding and having those skill sets. So I think that's a perfect segue to my next slide. What is leadership? I'm asking you guys, what is leadership? What does leadership mean to you?
I think we all have a different definition for leadership, but for me, it's behaving in a way that builds common sense of purpose and motivates people forward.
Okay, so it builds a common sense of purpose and motivates people. Yes. Yep, definitely. What else? What is leadership?
The ability to take ownership.
The ability to take ownership. Yes, and you'll hear that a lot, especially I think in the software industry. Yeah. Guidance and direction. Leadership is also guidance and direction. Yeah.
Setting the standard, being an example.
Setting the standard. We talk a lot about like setting high standards, being an example. Yes, that is something, especially at Tableau, we talk about leading by example. We talk about our managers as servant leaders. It's not about you, it's about the team.
I think empathy is used primarily in leadership. If you're a good leader, you're able to understand the people with whom you are motivating towards a goal.
Yes, so you just talked about empathy. Empathy is a quality that good leaders have, and so that kind of I think also talks to a point that I'll get to later, is the importance of being able to do that. The importance of being able to understand where somebody that you're working with, or a partner team, being able to understand their perspective or their communication style really helps make you a more effective leader. So this is a quote from Robin Sharma. Leadership is not a title. That is very much a philosophy that we live by at Tableau. It's just because I'm a manager doesn't mean that I'm a leader. And just because somebody is an individual contributor doesn't mean that they are not a leader. Everyone is a leader. And so at Tableau, one of the things that we do is every single employee, usually within the first 6 months, goes through a leadership one-on-one training, because everyone is a leader. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And so a lot of what people said today definitely applies. It's a behavior, live it. Okay, now that sounds great. How do we actually make that tangible? And so that's something that you can. So one of the goals for me today is I want you guys to leave with 2 or 3 tactical things that you can go back and. It's great to understand what does leadership mean, but what are the 2 or 3 things that you can take away and act on right after this talk? So that's definitely one of my goals. If I'm not hitting that, then hold me accountable. Okay. So I wanted to talk about the freedom scale. And so someone talked about leadership is ownership. You mentioned that. And that very much ties to the freedom scale. So, what is the freedom scale? So it is a way to use, it's a way to define boundaries of power and control so that you can get the right results, okay? And so here there's 5 levels, right? There's, the first level is like waiting until that you're told to do something. Another level is being asked, is asking, what should I do? And then it kind of goes up from there, where at the top, it's, you can act on your own, and, just your role with your manager or your peer or whatever group that you're in is that you're reporting status routinely, right? There's definitely the communication. It's not necessarily you're acting on your own in a vacuum, still operating as a team, but you are able to act independently. Now, for me, one of the things that I look at when I'm hiring a team or building a team is I actually want people to strive for level 3 or higher. And I say that, and sometimes it can be controversial because someone says, hey, I'm an intern. I just joined the team. You want me to be able to recommend what to do? I'm not ready for that. And my advice is, at a minimum, start with 2, but you need to work your way up there. Because you've been hired for a reason. You obviously have skills and experience that the company valued enough to hire you. And so, yes, there is an expectation that you will provide that input. You don't always have to know the right answer, but the fact that you can put in some thought into, here's the problem, here's what I think I can do, is always a great step. And the more you do it, just like with anything else, the more you do it, the better that you get at it. And so that is, a tactical thing that hopefully that you guys can start working on, and you practice it. And whether it's like a software project that you're working on with people here, and like you're stuck you're running into an issue, and before you're asking for help, think about, well, here are the things that I can do to help unblock myself. And then check in with a buddy or check in with someone else and say, here's what I'm thinking of doing to unblock myself. What do you think? And get their ideas. And that is actually going to help you build the skill set for whatever, later on in your career, when you are in a situation where maybe it is there a harder problem. So the other things that I wanted to say about here is, if you are level 4 and level 3, what it does is that it actually, so level 3 and level 4 are great because, that's sort of where like you can work closely with the manager or coach and really start to get better. Because if there was like, if somebody's new and like you don't know, exactly the right way to solve a problem, your manager can help you at that point, right? Or the expert on the team, or technical lead or expert can help you on the team. Level 5 is ideally, of course, where you want to be, like that provides you the most growth. But level 3 and level 4 are sort of, for me, it's like kind of a good place. If someone is getting to level 5, well, I need to figure out how to challenge them more, right? And so optimally, level 3 and level 4 is where you want to be. Because if you are at level 5, then you also need to be asking, am I being challenged enough, right? Is there do I want to be in a situation where I'm learning more, and so that I can be learning from experts, right? And so another, I guess I'd say, tangible way of describing this is one of the things that we do, on the team is we have features that we're working on. And so we will assign, like this person, doesn't matter their level, right? They're leading this feature. And of course, I will do it based on their skill set and experience. That's my job as a manager, to make sure that I'm giving you ownership of a feature that is commensurate, like that measures your skill level. And then the idea is that you write a design doc, like you'll work with the PM or whatever, and then you'll write a design document, and then you will bring that, and we'll review it as a team. But this is an example of how, there's a problem and you need to help come up with a solution, but you're not just sitting there and waiting for somebody to tell you how to implement it, right? And if it's, whether it's before the meeting, you meet with a couple of other people, like there's different techniques that you can use to be able to show ownership and then be able to like recommend a solution. And maybe you leave the meeting with a totally different solution, and that's okay, but at least you were able to get people together in a room with something tangible to work on. Any questions on the freedom scale? Before I move on from that. Clear? Yeah. So this is, I want this to be interactive, so as you guys have questions, please feel free to ask. 'Cause I can definitely, I mean, I have a set of slides, but we can tailor this to the audience to be good.
Question.
Oh, I can see it.
Not so much too much on the specifics of the freedom scale, but just curious, is that something that, that you kind of built out personally, or is that something more disseminated at Tableau?
This is at Tableau. Yeah, so when we take the leadership one-on-one class, like the concepts that I am talking about here, you will, like everybody in the company will hear about it. And so that is actually a really good question, because what that does then is it gives us as a company a language to communicate with. Like if I'm telling my team like, hey, I'm expecting a freedom scale of 3, people know what I mean, right? And I'll talk about that as well when I talk about communication styles. Yeah. But there are, I mean, of course, this is all coming from, you know, different, there's a ton of material online as well around this type of stuff. Yeah, good question. Okay, so one of the things that, you know, we talk a lot about at Tableau is like, how can, so you have a result that you want to achieve, right? How can you achieve this result? What are the things that, or if there's someone else on another team and you want them to do something, or like, you know, people will say, oh, that other team is so difficult to work with, or this person is so difficult to work with. We focus on the results. We tend to focus on the results. And so one of the things that we talk about at Tableau is like, okay, you know what result that you want, and maybe you understand the behavior that it will take to get that result, but you're not going to change behavior without understanding people's beliefs. And so we call this it's the results model, and the idea here is like, first understand beliefs, understand people's beliefs. So one of the things that someone mentioned earlier when I asked about leadership is they said, you know, I think it was you, right, about empathy, right? Being able to understand where, you know, other people are coming from. And so this is part of that. You want to, if you understand beliefs, then beliefs drive behavior, and that behavior will drive our results. So how many people have heard of Pete Carroll's philosophy, win forever? Right. Come on, Seahawks fans, come on. And so what he says, right, the belief there is it's all about the ball. Everything counts, respect everyone, right? That's the win forever philosophy, right? But that's the belief. Like, if you understand the belief, then the behavior will follow from that, and then the results will follow from that. And so even in the workplace, right, like we talk about like our you know, mission at Tableau is to help people see and understand data. And if we can go back to, hey, that's our belief as a company, and then be able to articulate that, that should drive our behavior. The reason I say that about being a mission-driven company is we are all like, you know, it's easy, even, you know, for myself to say, hey, well, this is my team and this is what we're working on. And, you know, another team is like, well, my stuff is important, right? But ultimately, it's the mission for the company is what we are all working towards. And so for you guys, I think the tactical thing here to think about is, as you are working in different situations and if you're not getting the results that you expect or the results that you want, great, we can, you know, like acknowledge that, but don't focus just on the results. And then even if you take a step back and say, okay, well, I'm going to focus on the behavior, like, you know, the person is behaving in this way, take a step even further back and try and understand what are their beliefs, what's motivating them, why are they behaving in the way that they are. And, you know, the one thing that I'll talk about a little bit later is, sorry, in the next slide, is how you can do that is, we call it by designing an alliance, right? Is like actually taking the time to sit with that person and understand what motivates them. And so this is stuff that, you know, will help you in the workplace, that can help in the workplace, but even in your day-to-day lives, right? Being able to take a step back and say, well, you know, this is what your motivation is. This is what my motivation is. You know, like a concrete example for my work would be like, for me, my motivation is like, we just announced the beta of this new product that I'm working on last week. And so my motivation is, we've told the world about this product. We need to ship this in January, right? And then we're dependent on other teams. And so I have to be very clear about what my belief is and understand where they're coming from, because they're not only doing work for my team, they're doing work for a ton of other teams. So how can we design an alliance that works for both of us? It's not a bad person. You know, the other dev manager or product manager, he's not a bad person. He's stressed out. He's got a ton of other teams to do work for. And so, you know, we work together to design an alliance and set expectations. Any questions on the results model? Okay, so here are now examples of like what you can do to really get to what are the beliefs, right? So first step is understand yourself. And so as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that we do at Tableau is everybody goes through this leadership one-on-one class. And in the leadership one-on-one class, we have a communication style. It's like a questionnaire that you fill in to understand your communication style. And you understand your communication style, like, you know, kind of if you're in a non-conflict or non-stress situation. And then you'll also fill out something to understand your communication style when you're in a situation of conflict, because it changes. It changes for people. So for example, for me, and we keep it really simple, there's a ton of, you know, the different communication style tests you can take, like tests you can take. People probably have heard of like Myers-Briggs and a ton of those, right? The advantage here is that like everybody in the company is doing this. And so for me, you know, my communication, so there's 3 communication styles. We just give them colors. So there's like red, green, and blue. Red is, you know, somebody who's biased for action. Green is somebody who will like take in the data, process in the data, more analytical, and then respond. And then somebody who's more in the blue communication style is very much looking towards making sure that everybody in the team is heard, values like everyone else's opinion. Now, all communication styles are great. It's not like one is better than the other. All of them are great. The important part is to understand what is your communication style first, right? So for me, I know that mine is red in the normal situation, so I can be very assertive, and I'm biased for action. And then in the situation of conflict, I actually change. I'm very green. You know, I'll go quiet and I'll start analyzing, and then I might say something a day later, not right away in the moment. That's my style. And so for me, what's also helpful, kind of next, is to understand, here I've said your audience's communication style, but like to understand your team, the people you work with, what is their communication style? And so as a manager, it's super important for me to understand how my team you know, communicates. And it's also important for them to understand how I communicate. You know, sometimes it can be like, well, it's kind of obvious, but it's not. So stating the obvious, stating that, you know, like I am biased to action. So if you hear me like rattle the stuff off, like don't freak out. It's just, you know, that's my style. And then I have to also be able to adjust. You have to also be able to adjust your style based on your audience. But even if you can just understand your strengths and communication style, and then understand your team members' communication style, just even that understanding and being able to articulate even before being able to adjust your style, because that's hard, but even just the understanding and communication of that understanding of styles makes a big difference. It's amazing like how a ton of conflict in the workplace is usually because of this. It's because of people not understanding how how someone needs to be communicated. And then especially with, Slack, things get said on, an email or in Slack, and really, things get missed, where you think somebody was being more curt than they really intended. And so that's something to be aware of. Why is this important? Ultimately, right, the goal is to ship software as a team, as a company. If you're having trouble working with other people, on your team, or the team has conflict, that's going to slow everybody down. And so that's why this is, these skills are really important. So one of the other things that we talk about at Tableau is we call design alliances. And so this is also, something that, like when you start a new job, right, the first thing we talk about is like a foundation, like doing the foundational sort of alliance, whereas usually it might be between you and your boss. And we have a framework that we use, but it doesn't have to be, that scripted. But the idea behind it is like, here is how we will work together as professionals, right? Like, what is my role on the team? Like, role clarity. What is my responsibility? What is your responsibility? What are our expectations? And what are our common goals? Helping to have that conversation, like having that conversation early, helps to then reduce ambiguity and conflict later. And it changes. It's not like, you talk about it the first 3 months and like it's going to be like that for 5 years, right? It changes, and that's why you have one-on-ones with your manager. You have one-on-ones, you can have one-on-ones with peers. Doesn't just have to be manager, but being able to have these conversations. And so, an example that I give is like when we first started the project that I'm working on. I was working with a product manager, and we kept butting heads, and I couldn't understand like why were we butting heads? Like, he's a really smart guy. I think I'm good at my job. And so we sat down and we talked about it. And I think like what happened was that he had the sense that I was, maybe stepping on his toes, trying to do a little bit of his job. And from my perspective, I was like, we just need to move faster. And so having that open conversation about how can we work together, we're in it together. If we succeed, we're going to succeed together. And so being able to openly talk about that really changed our dynamic and how we are working together. That less than a year later, we're shipping a beta and launching a new product. And so all of this definitely has helped me personally. So it's not just something that I'm talking about from a theoretical perspective, but I actually have used it and seen it impact my day-to-day. Has anybody else done something like that? Has anybody tried that and wants to share their experience with the group?
I came out of an executive leadership role. We used,
I won't be able to repeat that.
I came out of an executive leadership role, and we used the DISC profile, which is very similar to what you're describing, to identify the different, not only communication styles, but personality makeups of individuals. And then we formulated our teams based on how those blended, because you don't want just all one communication style or one personality style. You need to have a balance. Sounds like probably very similar to you. I'm just get it done. I'll fill in the blanks later, but let's get it done. And we need the people who say, wait a minute, let's slow down. We need this information. So you're spot on with what you're describing.
Yeah, that's a really important point actually, is that you want a variety of communication styles. And that is actually something that I've had to work on building consciously and actively on my team. It doesn't just happen.
Right.
It doesn't just happen. You have to look for that and make sure you have that mix. Not just the mix of technical skills, but also the mix of people who will be able to match in communication.
We do a lot of group projects here. Hi, my name is George. Glad that you're here. We do a lot of group projects here, which really excite me, but more so from the early part of our 201, which is our foundational course, we were asked to evaluate the different personalities of our group mates, and it was really exciting for me because I was able to see how I could fill in the gaps for if someone felt that they don't communicate as well, or they feel that they don't get a chance to communicate. I really wanted to encourage them to talk more, and I vice versa asked them to be aware of things that I wanted to improve on. So it made an easier transition when we were working together because we did understand. So that's a big value here at Code Fellows.
Yeah, that's a great point. And one thing I will say is like being aware of that helps a lot. So one of the things that we do at Tableau, I was talking to Elizabeth about this earlier, is we make sure that like before we go into a meeting or a design review or something, we'll have a pre-read. And so the reason for that, and it's really intentional, is so that not everybody is comfortable speaking up in a group setting. And so that's an avenue for someone who has great ideas, but it might not be as comfortable speaking up in a group setting to put their ideas and thoughts in the document. And then when we are in the meeting, one of the things that we do at Tableau is we actually raise our hands before we speak so that we're not interrupting each other. And that there is a visual cue that I'd like to say something, so you don't feel like, oh, when's the right time for me to speak up? And so those little things make a big difference in how people engage in the discussion. So it's a great point. And I'm glad that you guys are already doing that at Code Fellows, because that is, even going into let's say start a new job, going to a new team, sometimes it can feel intimidating to talk about, hey, like, what's your communication style? So, starting with your manager, or like just a way of saying, hey, I just wanted to talk about role clarity, or like I want to talk about, my responsibilities and make sure that we're aligned, and being very upfront about, this is how I communicate. Does that work for you? So there are ways that you can do it, even if you're in an organization that maybe doesn't do it by default. But I'm glad to hear that it happens here at Code Fellows. Okay, so the big thing for me, right, I said I want you guys to leave with practical tips. I don't want just a session on leadership and then we go home and forget about it. So the big thing I think, and some of this, hopefully all of this is not new, but I'll put it in the context of like why it's important for leadership. Like finding a mentor. The reason for that is no matter, and not just one, right? Multiple mentors. Especially if you're starting a new job or you are looking for a job, somebody to help you navigate, a sounding board. And especially like, hey, I just joined this company and I'm not really sure how people are communicating. Like just a sounding board who gives you advice on, maybe try this or maybe talk to this person. Like I was mentoring an intern, 2 summers ago, or it was last summer actually, maybe it was 2 summers ago. But she was working at a local tech company here in Seattle and was not able to, she started her internship, but she was not really assigned a project. And the first few weeks she had a mentor, but he wasn't super engaged. And so, from her perspective, the internship was not going well at all. And so she was like, I don't even know if they want me here. And so I sat with her, and the conversation that I had with her, kind of going back to leadership and the freedom scale, is you need to speak up. They hired you. They're probably just busy. Everybody's running, 50 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour. They're just busy. It's not intentional. You need to speak up. You need to maybe meet with other people in the organization and brainstorm some ideas on what you can do. It's not ideal. An intern shouldn't have to do that. But if you're in that situation, don't sit back. And so the idea, and of course, that kind of lit a spark in her, and thankfully, the internship turned around and she had a great experience. And so having that outside perspective helps, because you can sometimes think, oh, like taking it too personally, oh, it's about me. You know, maybe I'm not supposed to be here, or maybe I'm doing, but having that outside perspective, a mentor can help provide that, and, you know, sometimes give you the kick in the rear end.
So I've heard of mentorships happening, and I have a friend, and she has one, but I haven't really heard a lot about how those relationships come about. Can you speak more to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, how do I find that mentor? Mentorship is great, but how do I find one? So that actually goes to my next point: build your network. So in this situation, it was a very sort of it's through her college or university, and like she signed up for an industry mentor, and I happened to be one, and we just got randomly paired. It's in California, it's like not even here, but we just happened to get randomly paired, and she ended up at an internship in the Seattle area, and so that just worked out. I will tell you, like, it's not very often that you will do a formal internship, a formal mentorship program like that, and it always works out, because there also has to be a connection. And so why I say build your network is because you can also leverage your peers as mentors. I do that, right? It's not just, yes, it's great if somebody that has more experience than you, but people around you here. People here can be your mentors, right? Build your network. And if it's not somebody here, someone here might know someone else who might be a fit for you. I'm not a super social, outgoing person, but the way I build my network is through my work, through my jobs, through my kids, through parents at my kids' school, and that's just build your network and be open to ask for help and to say, hey, I'm running into this issue. Do you know anyone who might be able to help? And so I think that is the way to do it. It's a lot of companies today have, like, when you join, you'll automatically be assigned a mentor within your group. And also they'll have more of sort of formal mentorship where you can sign up for a program where you'll be paired with a mentor outside of your group. So that's also a way to do it. But for me personally, what I found the most effective way is when I am using my network, whether it's my peers who are now, in different companies at different jobs, or it's through my social network, where somebody also happens to be, in the same industry I'm in and has some advice and guidance. So yeah, that's a great question. So the other thing that I also wanted to say is, like, around mentorship that you reminded me is, like, you also change mentors. You don't necessarily, like, I've been in formal mentorship programs, and I've had people mentor me, and we still keep in touch. But at some point, it's it's just you move in different directions, and that's okay as long as you're conscious about it. I will say, and like we could do a whole hour just on mentorship, but I will say that you also want to be the one driving the mentee should be the one driving the relationship, right? You want to be the one who's, like, setting up the time to meet. You want to come prepared. If your mentor gave you some suggestions or advice at the next meeting, you want to talk about that you actually did it, or if you didn't, why, or what happened. So you really want to be driving that relationship. And if it's not working out, it's okay. It doesn't have to just be that one person. The other thing that I would say around leadership is, maybe it sounds kind of obvious, challenge yourself, learn new skills. But the reason that I say that is, like, go back to the freedom scale. The more you do this, right, the more new things that you try, the more that you challenge yourself, you start to build confidence in your ability to, like, identify and recommend solutions, right? And so that when you are starting a new job, it's totally different. You can say, well, it's totally different, but I have experience from, so-and-so project that I worked on, and maybe we could try this. And so even if it's a skill in a totally different industry, you can bring that. Like, you know, I've worked with, you know, in the tech industry, I've worked with music majors who come in with amazing insight that we would never have thought of, but just because of their, you know, their unique skill set that they're bringing to the team. So definitely think about that. We're almost out of time, so I'm going to go quickly through these last two. Is proactively seek out opportunities. That's even within an organization when it comes to leadership. Like, don't necessarily just wait. And I know it can be hard to do it, but that's my advice is like ask. Go look for stuff. Like I have somebody on my team now and you know, he wants to, so I spoke at our Tableau conference last week in front of 17,000 people. Scary. So he is so inspired by it that he wants to do it, but if he didn't come and ask me, I wouldn't know. And so now, like, you know, I speak at our boot camp, you know, every month at the Tableau boot camp. And so I'm like, why don't you do it instead of me, right? So it's a great opportunity for him. But he actively came to me and said, hey, this is something that I want to do. So my advice to you guys is proactively seek out opportunities and push yourselves, because that will lead to something else. And maybe if I would have said, hey, look, there isn't an opportunity now, that's fine. 3 months from now, something would come up, and I would think of him because he took the time to ask me. So that's something that I will, you know, definitely want you guys to think about is proactively seek out opportunities. And then the last point here is that we talk a lot about this at Tableau, and we have a leadership reading group. We say leaders are readers. And so I think the last time I was here, I had sent the reading list. So I don't know if you guys, if they still have it, then they can email it out to you. But if not, I can resend it to Elizabeth. But we have a list of books that we, every month, we, you know, kind of get together. Not everybody in the company, but a few people who are interested. Like, we'll take the time to read the book and then talk about it. And so that's also, you know, something for you guys to think about. And I think that's it. So we're right at time. So maybe time for one question. Although we did ask in between, so I don't feel so bad. Any questions? Yeah.
So I'm still kind of formulating this as I ask it, but, so thinking back to your leadership scale, can you think of any kind of example in the workplace where you had someone who was kind of new, was a little bit low on the seniority ladder, and was having that trouble of figuring out where do they fit in, what do I work on, and that they kind of followed that path and sort of how that ended up with the results there?
Mm-hmm. So the question was, you know, an example in the workplace of someone who didn't necessarily have the seniority, but was able to then turn things around. Is that the question?
Sort of, like, you know, they kind of found themselves in that spot where it was like, what do I do? Everyone's, like you said, everyone's going 50 miles an hour, and I don't know how to catch up. But they kept to the process and sort of where they ended up from that.
Yeah, so I think for me, the example that I gave was of the intern, you know, at a local tech company, was able to turn things around. I've had also, I would say, I've had at least 1 or 2 people directly on my team who've, you know, started out like that, coming in and not sure exactly where they fit in. I would say it's harder for it to happen maybe on a team, because like we are very conscious and deliberate about assigning you a mentor and then, you know, having work items. But, you know, I'll give an example. Like I had somebody join the team 2 weeks ago, and we were all busy preparing for the conference, you know, and kind of in some ways left him to his own devices. Like, okay, here's a few bugs, can you go figure out how to fix it? And of course, he broke the world. And we had to react to that, not his fault. But I would say, yeah, so that can happen, but the way that, at least that I've seen in him, like the resilience in him is, one was like, you know, he saying, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go and figure out how to, you know, fix this bug, and in his defense, he did send it out for code review, right? But of course, people were busy and didn't take the time to do a good job with code review. Checked it in, broke the world, reverted it right away. And throughout all of it, though, like, you could see he was calm. He was calm, but he was always looking at what can I do to, what are the specific things that I can do to help remedy the situation, right? Who can I talk to? Who in the company can I reach out to get help from? And so, we just, we fixed it on Wednesday, and then yesterday we had what we call an RCA, root cause analysis. And then he took leadership in driving the root cause analysis and setting the agenda and inviting people to come and talk about it. And so, yeah, I would say that, I don't know if that helps, but that's an example of it's everybody's worst nightmare. You join a team and you break the world, and how do you deal with it? And so I think that's an example of leadership. It's not only, it's how do you recover from that, and he's done a great job. And he'll make the team better for it. So hopefully that helps. Good question. Okay, thank you very much.